story that we are focusing on this hour. It's the day one of the historic G20 Leaders Summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed world leaders in his inaugural speech, and the first session of the G20 Summit has now begun. Prime Minister Modi in his inaugural address welcomed African Union as a permanent member in the G20. Prime Minister Modi will also hold bilateral meetings with leaders of Comoros, Turkey, UAE, South Korea, EU, Brazil and Nigeria. He's also expected to do a pull-aside meeting with Canadian President Justin Trudeau. And on September 10, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have a lunch meeting with French President Macron. In fact, PM Modi has already held bilateral talks with heads of Bangladesh and Mauritius. Joining me live is my colleague Rishabh, who's right there at the Bharat Mandapam in the thick of things. Rishabh, a big development there just before the first session of the G20 Summit. The G20 no more will be a G20 now. It will be G21 with the induction of the African Union.
Well, definitely. We broke the story yesterday that African Union will be part of G20, and the deal has been brokered at the joint Sherpa track meeting last week in outskirts of Delhi. Now it is official. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has welcomed African Union as part of G21. Remember, India has been voicing the concerns of Global South under its presidency, and the first meeting that happened for G20 was the Global South Summit in January this year. Since then, the government of India, as well as India as chair of G20, has been voicing the concerns of Global South. And this is something that is now culminating. African Union, the 53 countries of African Union will now be part of G21 for that matter. And why is this very important? African Union is a union of 53 African countries. Africa is major part of Global South. Countries like Nigeria, countries like Congo, countries like South Africa and others have been voicing their concern that African Union should be part of G20, and India understood this demand, and last month Prime Minister wrote to all the members of G20 to ensure that African Union becomes part of G20, and G20 is now rechristened as G21. Next year in Brazil, it won't be G20, but G21. But how is it significant? A, India's outreach to Africa will get a major push, given that African Union has been made part of G21 on the basis of Indian demand. Apart from that, if we talk about what's on agenda today, the agenda is set: one Earth, one family, one future. In the first session, the leaders would discuss SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and development that is led by women. Apart from that, climate change, climate action, climate financing. These are the things that will be discussed in the first session, which is called One Earth. Apart from that, when it comes to one family, mutual development of countries, member countries of G20 is something that India is putting forward. India has announced that G20 presidency under India will be inclusive, and we have seen it now. African Union has been included, Global South has been included for that matter to G20. Inclusive is done. Now comes the time for decisive and action-oriented. We will see, and that's what the sources are confirming, that the New Delhi declaration will be a decisive declaration of G20, and that is something that everyone is now looking at.
Absolutely.
What all the joint declaration has to offer. What will be the declaration talking on? Food security, energy supply, global geopolitics, Indo-Pacific. How things will unfold from here will be very, very important.
Yes. Absolutely, Rishabh. Thanks a lot for getting us all of that information. We'll keep coming back to you for more on this. But yes, India's spearheaded the induction of African Union into the G20, which of course from next year will be called the G21, and that's a major push as far as India's voice in the Global South is concerned. We'll continue to get more information on that, and we'll keep a track on all those developments. But meanwhile, as the G20 Summit kicks off in Bharat Mandapam, my colleague Akansha also spoke exclusively to the chief coordinator of the G20, Harshvardhan Singla, who gave us a glimpse of the events that have been lined up for today and the preparations for the mega conclave.
I'm joined by G20 coordinator Harshvardhan sir. The day that we were waiting for is finally here. What all is lined up? Could you please explain to our viewers?
Well, today the leaders will have discussions. There are two sessions, as was announced at the press conference yesterday, One Earth, One Family. And there will be a dinner hosted by the Honorable President also in the evening. So from that perspective, it is a full day and there is a lot that is going to happen. There's also a cultural corridor in the Bharat Mandapam. And so there are a lot of activities which are there in place and which will definitely, I think, hold the attention of the most important international leaders who are going to be here for the G20 Summit.
So as a chief coordinator of G20, how challenging was this for you to coordinate all this?
Well, it's been a whole of government exercise and I think a whole of nation exercise because people in every corner of India have been involved in the G20 effort. And so from that point of view, planning and preparation started a long time back. And today we are, quite comfortable in the fact that all the arrangements are very much in place. And as we are about to receive, our Prime Minister is about to receive the world's leaders, the backup and background and the entire, work that goes into making the summit is well in place.
Thank you for speaking with us. So this was G20 Chief Coordinator Harshvardhan speaking to us about the arrangements that have been made and also what all is there that will be done during the day when the G20 Summit will take place here at Bharat Mandapam.